Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 23rd of March, 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So I think the thing that I'm going to be focusing on for probably half of this episode is the Coinbase drama from today. Now, in case you haven't been on Twitter today or haven't seen anything in the news about this, Brian Armstrong announced on Twitter that Coinbase had received a Wells notice from the SEC focused on staking and asset listing. A Wells notice typically precedes an enforcement actions, and of course, Brian has a whole tweet thread here about this, and there's a lot to unpack here about what's going on. First of all, I wouldn't say I'm surprised by this at all, given that the SEC has not been kind to crypto for quite a while now, and we all know that. That's quite obvious at this point, right? Gary Gensler is definitely not a friend. The SEC just gaslights and doesn't actually provide any regulatory clarity, and really seems like they want to hurt crypto as much as possible. Now, on that note, I want to start there, to be honest. I see a lot of people talking about this stuff as if it's like a war on crypto, or that the US government and the regulatory bodies are have a concerted effort to take down crypto. And I will probably take the unpopular kind of side of this here and say that I don't actually think that's the case. What I think is happening is that right now, the world hates crypto, right? Like, so many people hate crypto because of the pain of 2022, the really big blobs we saw with Terra and with FTX and stuff like that. So it's kind of popular to hate crypto right now, right? So if you look at it from that lens, well, what do regulators want to do, right? What do the individuals as part of these regulatory agencies want to do? Well, obviously they want to advance their own careers. Now, it's no secret that Gary Gensler obviously wants to advance his own career. He wants to end up at the Treasury eventually. He doesn't want to be at the SEC forever. So what better way to advance your career than bringing enforcement actions against something that everyone hates, right? And I've talked about this before, how they've brought enforcement actions against celebrities, in particular ones like Kim Kardashian for promoting, I guess, like, pretty much scams, right? But they do that for the headlines. And they actually did that today with a bunch of other celebrities for promoting Tron, I think, and some other assets based on Tron. But that's how I kind of view this. I view it as humans having career ambitions within these regulatory bodies. They see an easy target with crypto, so they take the easy target. Now, Coinbase has announced that they're actually going to fight this. And as I've said before, Coinbase had stated that they were going to fight any action against them. And this is going to get taken to court. Now, these sorts of things can last for years in court. Do you think Gary Gensler is going to be at the SEC for years? Do you think he gives a shit what the outcome of this is if he's not there anymore? Of course he doesn't, right? Coinbase coid win, and Gary Gensler could be at the Treasury or be somewhere else, right? And for him, it's like, okay, well, whatever, I don't care anymore. Because at the end of the day, I truly believe that him and others like him do a lot of things for their own career advancement rather than for actually protecting investors or because they hate crypto or something like that. I really do think that at least maybe it's not the whole reason, but I believe it's a big reason is that they don't necessarily hate crypto. They're just using it as a way to essentially advance their own career. Now, of course, the action against Coinbase here is not based on any kind of merit or reality. It doesn't really make much sense. As Brian says in his thread, and as Collins Belton said here, there is a kind of blog post that was put out, I believe, by Coinbase that basically walks through what Coinbase has been doing with the SEC over the years and why this enforcement action against them makes no sense. So Collins quotes here and says that Coinbase has had 30 plus meetings with the SEC. They've spent millions of dollars drafting a registration proposal, despite that literally being the SEC's job to do. They've gotten ghosted by the SEC for over 9 months. They were promised a meeting for clarity with the SEC, which was cancelled with 1 day notice, and then Coinbase was sued for being a bad actor. So essentially, Coinbase has tried to do absolutely everything right. They are the most legitimate company in crypto, I would say, at this point. I don't think there's any other company out there that is as legitimate as Coinbase, besides maybe, the Kraken and maybe something, and maybe other US-based exchanges. But in terms of scale and size, Coinbase beats them, by a lot in that regard, right? But I would say Kraken is definitely up there as well. But Kraken did have an enforcement action, and I discussed that a few weeks ago around their staking product. But obviously, Coinbase was next on the chopping block here. But as I said, Coinbase is not going to take this lying down. They're going to fight this in court. They've stated that. And as I said, these court cases can take years. And I don't think that Gary Gensler is going to be around for that long. Maybe 2 years from now. You know, the funny thing is, the thing is that he has a term which can get renewed, but his term could be up instantly if the government changes next year. So, for example, and this is why people say 2 years. So, for example, if the presidency changes and the executive branch changes and the presidency changes there, and the Republicans win, right, they would instantly get rid of Gensler because he is not a Republican nominee, right? They'd get their own guy in there or their own girl in there, whoever it is, right? But that is still pretty far away. The election isn't until next year, until the end of next year, pretty much, I believe, if I'm getting that right. So we can't really rely on that. But in saying that, this court case could go on until after next year, the year after, right? And by that point, Gensler will probably not be there anymore. As I said, I'm sure he doesn't want to stay there forever. But yeah, this is just the classic SEC MO here, just to not do anything, keep saying, come in and register, come in and get clarity from us, come in and be compliant. And when Coinbase tried to do that, and they tried really, really hard to do that, they were stonewalled and then met with enforcement action anyway, which is just beyond ridiculous, right? It's obviously not something that we want to be seeing, especially from regulators in the US, which are supposed to be the bastion of democracy and freedom. And I'm not really seeing much of that lately out of the US regulatory regime here. So that's basically the TLDR of what's happened with the enforcement action. And as I said, it's against their staking products and against certain asset listings, which is pretty broad, right? I mean, I know Coinbase has listed a bunch of crap in the past that people, it was questionable. People were like, why are they listing this asset? And I was like that too on a bunch of these things. But the staking product, I think, is the thing that I'm, I guess, I wouldn't say concerned about, but the thing that I think the SEC will hit hard about is because they've shut down one of Coinbase's. It's not a staking product, but they've shut down one of Coinbase's product before, which was Coinbase Earn. They've obviously shut down Kraken's staking product. So it remains to be seen if they're able to do the same to Coinbase. But the fact that Coinbase is fighting this in court means that they're going to have a much harder time doing that there. Now, Coinbase's chief legal officer, Paul Grewal here, who I've talked about before on the Refuel, put together his own thread with the blog post basically here, which the blog post is titled, "We asked the SEC for reasonable crypto rules for Americans. We got legal threats instead." Yeah, this is just more of the same, I guess, from the SEC. And you can read the blog post for yourself and the tweet thread from Paul here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But I also put a tweet out today where, just to put this in context of how absurd this is, I put out a tweet and I said, the SEC misses one of the biggest frauds in history, FTX and Alameda, right? Gary Gensler cozies up to the head of that fraud, SBF, and then the SEC goes after the most legitimate company in crypto, Coinbase. Yes, very normal and totally rational. Now, I described at the beginning of the episode why I believe this isn't necessarily a war on crypto. It's more of a kind of land grab for power and also for career advancement. I'm not going to say there isn't certain parts of the US government, certain parts of the regulatory regime that hate crypto and want to see it, I guess, like maybe not banned, but want to see it kind of die. Elizabeth Warren is the poster child for that, but there's obviously more people out there. But as I said, I don't think the whole thing is a concerted effort from the US government to be like, we need to shut down crypto, because if they wanted to do that, they would literally just ban crypto, right? Like they have the power to do that, even though it would be challenged in court and everything. They have the power to do that, or they could come up with some reason to sanction the entire network, right? They could sanction the entire Bitcoin and Ethereum networks, right? So they could come up with any reason they wanted to do this. Now, some people will say, well, they're not doing that because they want to be able to do it and for it to stick, so they'll do it slowly, death by 1,000 cuts. But that strategy is actually not great for a number of different reasons. The two major reasons is that the admins change, right? If this is the Democrats trying to do this, well, then if the Democrats lose next year, all of the death by 1,000 cuts they try to do pretty much can get reversed and can get stopped in its tracks. And two, it's not very effective because a lot of these things can be fought in the in courts. And there's been a bunch of there was a judge the other day that basically slammed the SEC, saying that they're crazy for bringing this enforcement action against, I can't remember who it was, because they haven't actually given the company, I believe it was, the organization, an ability to be compliant with the SEC. And the SEC actually, sorry, I should say, Coinbase actually asked the SEC what assets they consider securities on Coinbase's platform, and the SEC wouldn't even answer that. So obviously they're not playing ball here at all. They're doing regulation via enforcement, which is not what we want to see. But yeah, I just thought my tweet showed the absurdity of this action and why it doesn't actually gel with reality, and why it basically looks like a power grab, right? And then I continued with another tweet where I said, friendly reminder, while the US is a big part of the world and the crypto economy, it is not the only place that exists on Earth. If the US continues down this shitty regulatory path, then over time crypto will simply route around it, and it'll be the US that ultimately loses. Now, I strongly believe this because let's give a hypothetical here. Let's say Coinbase is forced out of the US and they can't be a US registered company anymore. Their stock gets delisted. Let's talk worst case scenario here, right? And maybe they can't even service US customers anymore. Do you really think that Brian Armstrong and his executive team are going to be like, well, we tried, that's it, bye-bye? No. What they're going to do is they're going to go register overseas, right? They're going to go register in some jurisdiction that'll have them. And there's plenty of them out there. And then they're going to serve the rest of the world. And if they can't serve US customers, which I think would be pretty far-fetched, that is obviously the worst case scenario, but if they can't serve US customers, they just won't, right? At the end of the day, Coinbase is a business. They're going to protect their business, or the executive team is going to protect that business as much as they can. And the fact that they were able to go public as well was hilarious to me, because in order to actually go public in the US, you need the blessing of the SEC to do that. You need their permission. So the fact that the SEC gave Coinbase permission and is now taking regulatory action against them is pretty ironic. And if they're taking regulatory action against Coinbase for products that were essentially launched before they went public, such as ETH staking, then that it just is bizarre, right? And that is something that will be fought in court, and that is something the SEC would probably have no chance of winning in court, because it doesn't really make any sense. Like, why did you approve Coinbase's IPO if you think that they have a product that doesn't meet the securities regulations, such as ETH staking, right? Or maybe an asset listing that was listed before the IPO here. But yeah, getting back to the topic, and it's not just Coinbase, right? It's any kind of crypto company in the US, any teams in the US, any individuals. They're not going to stick around if their entire livelihood is at risk. They're going to move somewhere else. And there's plenty of places in the world that are embracing crypto. The funniest thing is that Hong Kong the other day actually legalized trading of large cap crypto assets, and I'm sure they're going to do smaller cap ones as time goes on. But Hong Kong in China is being more, I guess, like friendly to crypto. It feels like at this point than the US is, which is insane. Europe, they've got a bunch of regulations they're putting in place around crypto, and they're actually trying to put things in place. They're not just doing regulation via enforcement. Crypto is getting, I guess, more and more popular in places like India. The government's, I think, warming up to that. The Middle East. As I said, there's plenty of places in the world outside of the US that are more than ready to embrace crypto. So I believe all the US is doing by attacking crypto, by trying to stifle innovation here, is just shooting themselves in the foot. And I think that's going to be the kind of theme probably for at least the next 18 months till the next election. And that's the thing. If the Republicans don't win, right, and Democrats win again, who knows? I don't know what the kind of the chances are of all that happening, but that just brings more uncertainty. But as I said, I don't think Gary Gensler himself actually wants to be at the SEC for that much longer. He definitely has bigger ambitions than that. So if he moves on, it'd be curious to see who replaces him. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many unknowns here, and that's why I hate these unelected bureaucrats, because you don't actually elect the SEC chairman, right? The party that you elect appoints them. So, or the president appoints it, like Biden appointed him, right? When he was elected. So from that lens, really, you have to basically vote by proxy to get rid of those people, which I just hate. I hate that system. I really don't appreciate unelected bureaucrats. They're pretty useless, I think, a lot of the time, and they do these land grabs and do these power grabs that don't really benefit anyone. But anyway, I think there's one more thing. No, that's it for the enforcement action against Coinbase. Hopefully that gives you a TLDR and gives you some of my thinking around this. I do have a lot more to say on this in terms of not the enforcement action against Coinbase, but regulatory stuff generally, because I see a lot of people panicking about it from time to time. They're like, oh my god, especially when it comes to the prices, they're like, what's gonna happen to the prices, blah blah. And I was talking to some friends about this today, and maybe it's worth me quickly just breaking down the summary of my view on this. My view on this is my view on basically everything in crypto and everything online. Everything online and in crypto is an attention game, right? And the news cycle moves so incredibly quickly. Today we're talking about Coinbase. Tomorrow we're going to talk about something different. By next week, no one's even going to remember this enforcement action against Coinbase anymore unless there's a major update, right? And it's not going to be the talk of the town. I mean, the Arbitrum token's launching today. Everyone's probably going to be talking about that, right? Instead of the Coinbase action. But my point here is that the regulatory stuff doesn't necessarily have to have negative impacts on the market prices, because the market prices don't necessarily have to be dictated by the regulatory action. And for my friends today, I actually broke this down and I said, let's go through each participant in crypto and how they think. So you've got the regular normie retail investor. How do they think? Well, they aren't here right now, right? But when they are here, they buy indiscriminately, right? They'll buy when there's froth and FOMO, when the prices are at all-time highs. They don't care. They're low information investors. They don't care about any of this regulatory stuff. Like, they don't even understand half of it. They're just like, number go up, I'm going to buy, right? Then you have the day trader. They're here right now. They're here all the time, but they don't trade based on the news and regulation stuff. They're based on technical analysis, right? They're based on these lines that they draw on a chart. A lot of the time, the regulation stuff for them, they see that and they don't even compute that into their model of how they're trading. They're trading based on trends, patterns, different indicators. They don't care about regulations. Then you have the long-term investors. They understand that short-term is noise, right? And their long-term thesis on assets is based on a wide variety of things. Regulation may be part of that, but their investment thesis is usually based on a wide variety of different things over the long term, and actually has it modeled in to ignore the short term kind of stuff. Unless the short term stuff is critical and existential, then you probably pay more attention to it. But stuff like the action against Coinbase isn't existential to crypto, right? It's obviously bad, but it's not something existential. Then finally, you have the noob retail investor. These retail investors, these noobs, like the total noobs, they panic about everything, right? And they'll buy on good news, they'll sell on shitty news, they'll just panic, right? And this is because they don't actually understand that no one else gives a crap about the regulation stuff, and no one else gives a crap about most other things. So in turn, this noob retail investor is using information that the market doesn't care about to make their decisions. And that's kind of like how I view it more generally, right? And going back to what I said about attention, what has the most attention in crypto by far out of anything? And what has the constant attention? Well, it's the prices of crypto assets, of course. Everyone's always looking at the prices. Doesn't matter if it's sideways, going down, going up. Everyone's looking at prices. Literally every single crypto participant, doesn't matter who you are. If you're a developer, if you're a trader, if you're just a community member, it doesn't matter what you are looking at the prices. Maybe you don't look at it every single day, but you're looking at it very regularly. Everyone is paying attention to that. Whenever the price goes up, it's all over Twitter instantly, right? Because everyone's paying attention to that. So, ergo, when you reason like that, you realize that all that matters at the end of the day is the price. The price sets the tone, that nothing else matters. If the price is going up and you get really bad regulatory news, no one gives a crap about that because the price is going up. They're like, oh my God, the price is going up. Who cares, right? So the price controls the attention because the attention is focused on price. The price is always in the news cycle. So at the end of the day, the price, at least and not just over the short term, but the medium long term, dictates everything. Nothing else really matters. And now, of course, everything else plays into the price. It dictates the price over the longer term. And there are a million different variables here, but in terms of the stuff that gets the most attention, it's by far the price. The regulatory stuff, if you think that the majority of the people in crypto that are investing in crypto are plugged in and smart enough to digest all of these regulatory actions and then make informed investment decisions based on them, well, you're kidding yourself. Because the perfect example here is that the merge, we knew the merge was going to happen for years. And how many people thought that the merger was never going to happen until it actually happened? How many people thought that the withdrawals weren't going to happen until it actually happened? How many people look at things like the OFAC sanctions and say the US government captured Ethereum because they don't understand what's happening with MEV boost? So when you look at it through that lens, when you actually understand that at the end of the day, the news cycle is incredibly quick, no one has the ability to digest everything and make informed investment decisions on their own. They would need a team for that, right? And even the people with teams don't really care about that sorts of stuff, and realize that the price dictates everything because the attention is on the price, then you'll understand why generally these things aren't as big as a deal as they're made out to be. But anyway, as I said, I didn't want to go too much on about that, but that's how I generally think about these things. And that's why I am pretty immune to panicking about these things. And I will just report on them, and I'll say if they're shitty, of course. And I'll say if they're positive, of course. But generally, I don't think it's worth panicking about. Anyway, leaving it at that. All right, moving on. So Brian had another thread. Brian Armstrong from Coinbase had another a tweet today where he said, he overheard from Jesse Pollack, and Jesse was saying, Onchain is the next online. Now, this falls into what I've been saying lately about how Coinbase is launching Base because they want to push as many users as possible to use on-chain products instead of just basically trading crypto on their exchange. They want to get people actually using crypto. And Jesse is at the forefront of that at Coinbase because he's the head of the Base initiative here. But, Brian wouldn't have let Jesse do something like Base if Brian didn't believe in it as well. So it's really, really cool to see this. It's really cool to see the synergies here because I personally obviously want to see as many users on chain as possible. And you guys know my view on this, that I don't really consider someone who buys crypto and just stores it on a centralized exchange to be a crypto user. Crypto user to me is someone who actually uses on-chain products. It doesn't matter if it's on Ethereum or another chain, but someone who actually uses stuff on-chain, that to me is a crypto user. But anyway, I just wanted to highlight that one there. Coinbase's wallet as a service that I talked about the other day has their APIs now available for public preview. So this might be something that's interesting for developers to have a look at. I discussed this the other day, so I'm not going to go too deep into this now. But Yuge here from Coinbase said, there's no need for complicated cryptography or blockchain-specific knowledge. Now, building a crypto wallet into your app is as simple as calling Coinbase's API endpoints. And then Yuge goes on to explain how this works in a Twitter thread, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. All right, an interesting project that I came across is something called Blopscan. Now, I only came across this project today, and they've announced that Blopscan, which is the first EIP 4844 Blob Data Explorer, is making great progress since being a finalist at ETH Bogota. They're dedicated to making Blob data accessible and preserved for posterity. Here's a quick update on our roadmap. Now, for those of you who may not remember, blobs expire I think the current spec is like every month. So essentially what happens is that the data stored in the blobs is inaccessible and is just basically gone unless someone saves that data, right? Now, anyone can save that data. It's not needed. Obviously, the state is saved and the hash is saved, and that's all well and good, but if you want that data, you have to save it yourself. So Blopscan is an initiative here that wants to do that. They want to be a blob data explorer. They want to store the blob data themselves and offer this service to the community. Now, I'm sure they're not going to be the only ones that do this. I'm sure like Etherscan's going to do this, and Alchemy and Infura, they're all going to do this, right? And even just hobbyists are going to do it. Like I plan to do it as well. I have 100 terabytes worth of NAS storage that I'm going to that I can use for these sorts of stuff to just keep that there. And the cool thing about this is that the data is hashed, so you can't actually, if you alter the data, people know that it's not the correct data because it won't match the hash that's actually permanently stored on chain. So really cool to see more of these services spinning up here. I did mention that I suspected these things would be made and would be created, and obviously they'll monetize in some way to make this sustainable. But yeah, they've made the first block explorer for 4844 blobs. It's on testnet right now, which you can check out. I'll link the thread in the YouTube description below for you to check out if you want to. But yeah, you can click through. It's quite basic right now. You can see here the different blocks with the different blobs in here and the hashes and things like that. But yeah, very, very cool to see this project. And as I said, I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, so MetaMask has announced Consensus has announced that MetaMask Institutional has, in partnership with Allnodes, Blockdaemon, and Kiln, launched a staking service for institutional investors. So they're going to be able to basically stake ETH, which a bunch of this is an institutional staking marketplace where basically the institutions will be able to select from a list of who they want to stake with and trade based on that. There's a little video here that's showing kind of you can bridge assets across different networks. You can stake ETH. You can see here, I mean, it's a bit hard to see in the video because the video is quite small. Maybe if I make it bigger here, I don't know if you guys can see that. Oh, you can. I'm just seeing on my screen. So you can see here that stake ETH, and there's a list of who you can who you can stake with. It's Consensus, Blockdaemon, Kiln, and Allnodes, and then it makes it just very easy for institutions to get started here. So very, very cool to see this service from Consensus and from MetaMask Institutional. As I've said before, I suspect post Shanghai we're going to see a lot more ETH staked, and we're not going to see that massive unstaking of ETH that people predict that we're going to see. All right, so Taiko's ZK EVM Alpha 2 testnet is now live. As was the case with the Alpha 1 testnet, it's permissionless for anyone to transact and deploy on. The big change is it's now permissionless for provers to generate proofs. That's pretty big, the fact that you can actually run a prover on Taiko right now. On this alpha testnet, which is very, very cool to see, and you can get all the details about this in the blog post here. Apparently, their prover does not require that much hardware though. It's an 8 or 16 core CPU, only 32 gigs of RAM, and proof generation takes about 10 minutes. And if renting a machine with the above specs, it would cost about 15 cents per proof. Now, obviously, the proving time and the cost can be brought down over time, but that's really great for the fact that you only need an 8 or 16 core CPU and only 32 gig of memory. Kudos to Taiko for doing that there. That's really awesome. But as I said, you can get the full breakdown of the Alpha 2 testnet and all the details around it. I'll link this blog post in the YouTube description below. But great to see Taiko making progress here. I think that from memory, they're on their roadmap, they plan to launch mainnet by the end of the year, if not early next year. So that they'll probably be one of the last ZK AVMs to come online. But they are building a ZK AVM, a Type 1 ZK AVM, which is different to all of the other ones out there, the Polygon one, the Scroll one, ZK Sync, and a bunch of others out there. I believe Taiko is the only one building a Type 1 ZK AVM, so I'm super excited for that, of course. But yeah, anyway, moving on. So Uniswap has introduced something called Mini Portfolio today. It's a new way to view your assets on the Uniswap web app. So you can see in the video here that you can see your tokens, NFTs, activity, LP pools, and more when you connect the Uniswap web app with any wallet. This is pretty cool. Again, this is Uniswap just bringing more stuff in-house for their users, making sure that their users get a nice and beautiful experience when using the Uniswap interface, not just to swap things, but also to view their assets. And this falls into what they've been doing with the Uniswap mobile wallet app as well that I showed the other day or a couple of weeks ago when they announced it. I don't think that's live just yet. It's still on testnet. I think the Apple App Store is still blocking it from going live. But yeah, they can't block this thing on the web app here. So very cool to see this. You can check out the video and the little tweet thread here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. All right, speaking of Uniswap, Enzo here shared that he just paid his Uniswap gas fee on Arbitrum with USDC thanks to SoulWallet. Now, you guys will remember that SoulWallet is a account abstraction / smart contract wallet that was announced the other day that they had raised a round that I participated in, of course. And you can see here with account abstraction and smart contract wallets like SoulWallet, users can now pay gas with ERC20s. So people often ask me questions about this. They say, well, if I can pay with USDC, what do I need? Does that take away the value of ETH as users gas? And I've long said that I don't think ETH's main value driver is its users' fees, but ultimately the fee is still paid in ETH because you're paying the fee on the Arbitrum network to the Arbitrum sequencer, but then the sequencer needs to pay the fee on Ethereum mainnet, and the only fee that the Ethereum mainnet accepts, the only fee currency that it accepts ultimately is ETH, right? So ultimately the fee is still paid in ETH to the base layer. And that's what protects ETH's value, especially with EIP 1559, where the base fee itself has to be paid in ETH. There's no way around that. The tip can technically be paid in other currencies, but the base fee has to be paid in ETH, and that's what protects the value there. So hopefully that addresses that concern, but very cool to see this. This is the power of account abstraction and smart contract wallets, and I can't wait to see more integrations come online here. All right, now to just round out today's episode was a service that was DM'd to me today from the Coinfeeds team. So what they've done is they've basically crawled all of the Daily Gwei podcast, whether they be refuels or AMAs or my old data dumps that I used to do, and basically I believe used AI where you can now search for anything. So you can basically search is ETH money. Here I can type in is ETH money, search it, and it'll comb through all of my podcasts, all of my content, and timestamp where I talked about ETH being money, or where I mentioned ETH is money in a sentence, or as part of talking about anything here, which is insane. You can ask it other questions. You can ask, what is MEV, right? And it'll come up, you search, and it comes up very, very quickly, and it'll comes up with my AMA, where I actually broke down what MEV was. This is actually a mind-blowing tool for me, because it basically means that you guys don't need to actually ask me these questions again in the Discord channel, or you don't need to comb through all this content to get to the answer here. You can just use this service. Now, of course, I'll link this in the YouTube description below, but this is awesome. I mean, you can ask any question. Like I asked, what is Ethereum's monetary policy? And it even came up with results for that, which I thought was cool, because I don't talk about that often, but you can see here, it's come up here, and it timestamps it for you, which is just insane, right? I love it. Absolutely love it. I don't know what else to ask it right now off the top of my head, but just anything you can think of. What is... Let's ask it, what is base? Let's see what comes up when you ask what is base here. Yeah, you could say let's see. Oh, maybe it's not that smart yet. It's getting confused between things like base fee and stuff like that. Maybe if I ask what is Coinbase's layer 2? And let's see if it comes up with base. No, it comes up with a bunch of different things. Obviously, still stuff to iron out here. I believe this is just an early preview of what this can do, but I think this is really, really cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing this evolve. But anyway, this will be linked in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.